Morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this session on creating competitive advantage through sustained digital transformation. My name is Kevin Daines. If you don't know me, I head up the leadership practice for Reed Technology, and this is one of the ongoing series of web sessions we're running in place of our physical events for business and technology leaders. I'm really happy to be joined today by Sunil Jindal and Jeremy Schwartz. They're going to be providing the chief execs, the internal senior middle management and industry agnostic consultants view of digital transformation in today's challenging economic environment where we all know that competitive advantage is absolutely everything. To frame today's session, we're going to be looking at digital transformation through three lenses. So the first is launch, which we're defining as the act of getting a digital transformation aligned across your key stakeholders and mobilised within your business. The second being deliver, which is the act of delivering your digital transformation through strategic programs of work together with your key partners, platforms and internal teams. And the third is sustain, which is the act of constant appraisal and iteration of your digital transformation to drive, and this is the important part, sustained competitive advantage. So we want today's session to be as interactive as possible, get the audience to engage with our speakers as much as we can. So there's two ways we're going to do that. The first is through the chat function. So if at any point you'd like to ask any questions to Sunil or Jeremy, pop them in the chat function and we will pick those up at the end and answer as many as we can. And the second is through a tool called Mentimeter, which you may or may not be familiar with. So if I could ask you all to take your smartphones and scan the QR code which is showing on the screen at the moment. Failing that, if you go to mentee.com and enter the code that you can see on the screen, that will allow you to take part in a couple of the questions and polls that we're going to be having as part of the session. So I'll give you all a couple of minutes just to sort that out. Assuming you've all managed to get that working, hopefully you have. Put in the chat if you've got any problems with that. So to kick off the discussion with the speakers, we wanted to start by showing some of the positive impact that digital transformation can have. So if we can start that with Jeremy, actually, if you could share with us your digital transformation story from your time as the chief exec of Pandora, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, well, hello everybody, and nice to speak to you. So I'm going to tell you about a story from last year and actually this year, which involves Pandora, the jewelry company. Now, some of you may not realize that it's a company of 2.7 billion turnover. It's got 2,500 stores and is in 90 countries. When I arrived in the end of 18, we were seeing a dramatic reduction in like-for-like in stores between -8 and -22%. The share price, I think would be fair to say it was a junk bond status, and e-com was only around 12% of sales, and actually about half of that was off a outlet discount tab. So people were actually buying the majority or half, at a cheaper price than you would get in the stores. So my commitment to myself has been over the last 5 to 10 years to be really at the forefront of e-com and digital transformation in the CEO roles I've had. And the very first meeting I had with the whole company on a town hall and with the board and the exec was to coin the phrase that Clinton had used in his election, which is, it's about e-com stupid. And okay, it's a bit of a provocative statement, but what I wanted to signal is that I felt the company needed to be actually a digital platform with an e-com backbone that happened to have 2,500 stores, as opposed to the approach that the previous management had been pushing, which was that we had 2,500 stores and probably should add another 1,000 stores. That was their business plan. And e-com just happened to be there. Well, that's not where I think the future of all retail and most business is, and that we all need to completely orientate ourselves towards e-com or apps or digital. So in January of 19, I basically said to the business, we have one chance to get this share price and the like-for-likes moving in the positive direction, and that's Christmas, because of course Christmas for most of us and many of us, depending on the business, is a critical time. So we had 9 months to basically turn around a business and an e-com platform in this discussion. And that required getting a bunch of stuff done in 9 months. And I'll just, a few of the things is to get a new chief digital officer who had the vision that I had and that we would lead the business, to RFP, getting brand new suppliers, to reskin the whole site, to bring new functionality, and to bring also a new brand image that the brand team had done and put that on the site. Now, what were the results? Well, what we saw was that great credit to the team, because they were able to launch every single element that we wanted for basically October, November 2019. And through Christmas, in their Q1 trading update, they were able to announce a 30% increase in the conversion rate, which is obviously people coming to the site and then buying. And e-com went from 12% to 18% share of the business. So that's a nice story. But actually, none of us, and of course we all know this, were able to predict that COVID was going to come. And this is where that transformation has really propelled Pandora from a company where it was in a sell mode. It had short buyers on the stock, even though it was still at sort of a junk bond status almost, and has absolutely excelled. And in fact, I thought it might be interesting just to read a investor commentary. This is one of the investor research teams, and this was his comment on the results that he got just a couple of weeks ago from the company. And he said, Pandora's online performance was best in class. 176% sales growth was unprecedented. And the 52% online share of total sales was the highest in the group being all luxury, all apparel, and all fashion. So whether a function of the category, the brand, the pace of recovery, or the e-com transformation, these numbers don't lie. And that has transported itself from a share price of 200 kroner in September to 500 kroner now. So actually the share price has grown throughout the lockdown because people have seen these results. So if I was to summarize quickly, what is behind this story? The first thing, and you're going to hear Sunil and I talk about these themes, but just to kick it off, is about agility and pace. Actually, I believe in setting unrealistic timelines, because through unrealistic timelines, actually people cut through all the crap, cut through all the resistance and deliver. And we saw that here. And then the other thing is getting a fantastic team led by a chief digital officer. And for that team to empower shortly. So I think that's a nice story to kick off. And I'd like to hand to Sunil, who has got some other positive stories about transformation.
Yes, morning, everybody. Delighted to have you here and be here as well with Jeremy and Kevin. Thank you both for the introduction. Yeah, so I'm going to reference some research from Forbes just to sort of bring to life some of the comments that Jeremy talked about. This is research from 2019. This is the effect of digital transformation across a number of businesses. So talking about 6 or 7 businesses, starting with Microsoft digital transformation journey, 5 years, a stock price growth rate of 258%. Hasbro, a journey of 7 years with a stock price growth rate of 203%. Best Buy, 7 years with a stock price growth rate of 198%. Some of the things that they did, they changed their business model from being purely selling to clients to actually advising, bringing more personalization into the business, and developing a pricing matching algorithm, which made sure that they were always, the most competitive in the market. Nike, probably one of the greatest digital transformation stories out there. Their digital transformation journey was 2 years with a 69% stock price growth rate, fueled by a complete reinvention of the supply chain, big investment in digital consumer, personalization, and basically just completely transforming how they get product into the hands of consumers. Target, a little bit longer, 8 years, stock price growth rate of 66%. A little bit for the technical folk here, this was a big migration of their website to the cloud that gave them cost efficiency, speed efficiency. They also built a buy online, pick up in store service, which at the time was quite new. And they did a lot of purchasing through social media, so really keeping up with trends and, in fact, if anything, accelerating trends. And one which I found particularly interesting was Home Depot, digital transformation journey of 2 years with a stock price growth rate of 59%. And they did something quite radical, which was to hire 1,000 IT and user experience professionals to transform the customer experience as a brand. And they also followed up with a seamless omni-channel capability through technology. Jeremy talked about launching and delivering and fantastic results in nine months and great feedback from the investment community. what these examples show is through sustained investment in delivery, digital transformation is about the long game and long-term strategic share growth.
I'm just going to pop the last slide back on the screen for the late joiners. We're using a tool called Mentee today. So on your screen, you'll see a QR code or a code to enter into the mentee.com website. For anyone late to the session, if you want to very quickly scan that with your camera and join that, because we're going to be using that in a second now. So thanks, Jeremy, Sunil, for those stories and data points. Wouldn't it be great if all digital transformation was that easy and gave us those results? Research suggests, I think, that 90% of digital transformations in one way or another fail, and we're going to try and explore why that might be. So this is where we're looking for audience interaction to start with. So if you could all go to the Mentee on your phone now, you'll see the slide will change, and there's a question there asking you what it is about. What are the words that you would say to explain why digital transformation has failed in your experience? And I'm just going to share that word cloud now. If you can start inputting words, guys. Yep. So looks like they're starting to come to a halt. So, Jeremy, Sunil, are you seeing similar issues to this, and what would you say in your experience are the reasons that digital transformation tends to fail?
Yeah. Well, perhaps I'll kick off, and thank you for creating that word cloud. It's really interesting to see. I've just taken a photograph because I want to refer back to it. But I'm going to take the point here of about senior management leadership and lack of senior buy-in, and a bit here about resistance to change and lack of knowledge. So I have a very strong view, and for those of you who are business leaders, and I think you are all in either at a functional level or at a company level, that actually the business needs to see that the CEO, the leadership team, and then managers within the organization are completely committed to the world of e-com and digital transformation. And actually, this is the message I have to the leaders who've worked for me. And I concretely gave this to my MEA regional director, actually my last role, which is that we have an obligation. We have an obligation as leaders to make ourselves as knowledgeable and as connected to the world of e-com, the world of social media, the world of Google Analytics, as almost the staff who we will charge to execute it. I've had examples where I've taken my leadership team and asked them to put up their hands if they've actually traded on eBay. And the only people to put up their hands were the leadership team who were women and myself. Now, I just don't think in this day and age it's possible to be a leader and not be trading on eBay, not to be using Amazon, not to be using Google Analytics. And you have an obligation to teach yourself. That's the bottom line, because the organization needs to see that belief in you as a leader and the expertise and knowledge, and that you can talk, let's call it a good talk, but a leadership talk. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, if we look at many companies, and let's look at retail and others, those companies that are dying, or now COVID has accelerated their death because frankly they needed to be cleared out because they weren't keeping up to date, demonstrates that actually a CEO or a leadership team's ability to keep their job is actually dependent on having a phenomenal e-com and digital, let's call it, because it may be an app like Trainline, offer. And therefore, I see this role as too important just to delegate to my CDO or CIO or marketing. I have this line, it's too important to delegate. What does that mean? It means that I personally need to take an active role in the decision making, because actually, if the decisions made by those members of my team are not the ones I want, I will probably lose my job. And therefore, it's too important to delegate. Now, there's another element of this also, which is about stretching and having an aspiration, which is, I'm sure all the teams have an aspiration, But in the end, it's the CEO and the leadership's CEO and the leadership's responsibility to really set, very stretching goals that the organization needs to and wants to and will live up to, because the temptation is to set not stretching goals of people, not because of anything other than a sort of fear. So I think that's one very important area. I want to give you two examples of where I've interceded as a CEO and got involved because I felt things weren't actually going at pace. And one of them was that in two organizations, I've been concerned that the leadership person, the chief digital officer, wasn't up to the caliber that I needed to get the transformation that I wanted. And therefore, not only did I just request the recruitment of that person, I personally wrote the brief, I personally interviewed with HR the candidates, because again, it was in my mind too important to delegate. I probably would be very involved in the finance director or the HR director's recruitment. And I feel that that same responsibility applies in this area. So, and one of the things that I remember from both of the people that I brought in is that I and my team and others across the organization were shocked by this line that I'm going to steal from Donald Rumsfeld, which is, we were surprised by what we didn't know, because the intelligence brings technology and this world that even if we try to be good at, it's pretty hard to stay at the cutting edge, and I needed somebody to lead in that way. I think another example that I want to share, and we'll talk a lot more later, is the challenge of what I call interfaces. And it's the interface between the digital team and the classic enterprise IT and the marketing. And I sadly have seen too often that there's a real conflict that occurs between those functions, the interface between them, as they try and work together, but actually either have different objectives, or that both IT and marketing want to do the digital work because they see it's exciting. And so there's a sort of a responsibility creep. So in summary, what I wanted to share with you here is that leadership is crucial, and actually that leaders within an organization need to step up to take that leadership role and to invest time to become an expert so they can be seen to lead from the front. Thanks. Sunil.
Sunil, have you are still on mute there, friend. Have you got any reflections on the word cloud?
Yeah, really powerful. And a lot of these resonate. I'd be interested in terms of some of the thoughts around alignment to strategy. Clearly, that's critical for digital transformation to succeed. Cost, you would argue that today's cloud-based technologies, open source, getting resources at a fraction of cost from nearshoring, offshoring might not be a challenge so much. Speed of change. We'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of how you can sort of look at that. But really, really great points, and I feel for everyone that you're experiencing a number of those issues, given the sort of good stories that Jeremy and I started off with. I'm going to actually add, Kevin, to the list of issues from what I've seen working within industry as a senior/middle manager and also as a consultant advising companies on digital transformation. And the one I'm going to add, and I speak from personal experience, is middle management engagement. Middle managers are key to your digital transformation success. They are the glue between your strategy and execution. As Jonathan Byrne of MIT observed, and I'll quote it, regardless of what high potential initiative the CEO may choose for the company, the middle management team will determine whether it's a success or failure. So it's absolutely critical that middle management are not the blockers to the strategy or the vision and the alignment that Jeremy spoke about, as that follows through into execution. Yeah, and some of the reasons, and I've been there, so I speak from personal experience, maybe a bit of self-preservation, maybe not having the skills, so I agree with the point made on the word cloud, loss of appetite, not feeling valued. Some of the people-centric issues are sort of quite relevant, I think, when you think about middle management engagement being an issue around digital transformation. The other area which I'm going to add to the cloud is how the business operates. And I think that's kind of intertwined with a lot of the elements here. For those who know the terminology well, the concept of the operating model, I've experienced firsthand working in and with businesses with a highly dysfunctional business operating model. What does that mean by dysfunctional? Silos, not invented here, funding arguments. Why should I fund this for the business? It might work over there. It might not. It might work over there, but it won't work over here. And a lack of individual accountability. So that operating model is fundamental enabler or disabler to digital transformation success and the issues that you may see within your businesses. The third area I want to talk about, again, it's kind of not necessarily in the word cloud, it's some of the behaviors and focus on the business's attitude to risk. In particular, a high risk adverse mindset. You just won't get the benefits of digital transformation without taking risk. Risk with financing, risk with business model, risk with the customer experience. You consider the risk of not doing something in today's challenging environment versus the unknown of entering digital transformation. I see software is mentioned here. The reality is it's quite easy these days. I mean, I've been in the technology industry for 30 years. So I remember when it used to take forever to get, some code off the ground and into the business and get feedback and iterate. That happens a lot faster now. There are accelerators, there are cloud platforms that have a lot of these capabilities off the shelf ready for you to integrate into your application. So it's unknown. Yes, it is. Of course it is. But it is made easier by now. And also, I'd invite you to consider, the not acting exposes you to the possibilities of new entrants, competitors who are acting. And if you continually not to sustain investment, you'll look outdated and you have even greater risk of just sort of plateauing into just being like any other organization and seeing others accelerate through digital transformation. So Kevin, I think that's one of the things I've seen in terms of issues. It's this whole attitude towards risk and how that sort of plays itself out. I think the other thing, and I speak personally about this, and it's kind of mixed in here around cost, is this attitude, as I call it, the attitude of perceived value versus results. So one particular organization had invested in a piece of technology, leading digital transformation technology, got a 90% discount from the partner, however, didn't read the small print. And the small print was that I think at least 80% of the licenses needed to be used within a 3-year period. And if they weren't used within that period, then the license discount would go back down to 50%. Of course, once the deal was done, the business as usual, there was nobody in the organization checking off the license usage. After 3 years, they didn't get the numbers and they got hit with a big bill at the end, which really wasn't great. The other example, again, unfortunately, the same organization had invested very heavily in another leading digital transformation technology provider and bought everything that company had to offer, like every single software package, because he got a great deal, right? 12 months later, that software's still on the shelf collecting dust because the business hadn't been engaged. So I think, just imagine explaining those two examples to the CFO, how she or he will feel about, it was at the time a great idea, but actually wasn't really thought through. So this perception of value over actual results is an issue that I see in terms of how digital transformation sometimes can fail.
Excellent. Thank you, Sunil. Thanks for that. So earlier in the session, I spoke about the 3 lenses of digital transformation. I'm going to repeat those just for the people that joined us late. But the next thing we'd like the audience to do is give us your experience of where in your organisation or your previous organisations you've seen digital transformation fail most often. So if we just switch back to the mentee, there should be a poll there for you to be able to vote whether you think it's in the launch phase, which is, as we discussed, the act of getting your digital transformation aligned across your key stakeholders and mobilised. The delivery phase, which is the act of delivering your digital transformation through strategic programs of work. And then finally, the sustain phase, which is the act of constant appraisal, validation of your digital transformation to drive sustained competitive advantage. So Jeremy and Sunil, I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah.
Our audience seems to experience failure in the delivery phase, don't seem to have too many issues or be aware of many issues getting it off the ground or actually continuing it once that first bang of transformation has been delivered. What are your thoughts on this, guys? And what are the strategies that you've employed to try and tackle the issues around particularly delivery?
Well, I think if I may kick off, Sunil, thank you again for your transparency. There's a couple of points that I'd like to make. The first is that the very word digital transformation positions this in the minds of most of us as a delivery project. And that's fair, and that's probably why most of you responded. But the reason that we've added this concept of sustain is that digital transformation doesn't actually stop. And our observation is that companies can fall foul when they don't realize that sustaining it is as critical as the delivery, even if the delivery may seem more painful at the start. One of the things that I've learned from doing a number of these conversations or speeches is the feedback I get is that what you really want from this is not just sort of theoretical conversations, but some really actionable things that you can take away. So do now in response to what you've shared is to give you three things. You literally could walk out of this call, go up to your teams, either yourself or to your leaders, and say, look, I've heard this thing. I think we should action it because it will help, because these are tactics that I've seen work repeatedly. So the first one is, and it goes back to the cloud and also to that delivery, is that as a CEO, and I obviously am coming from that position, I've observed that a project that I want to be on brief, on time, and on scope, of course, we all want that, will always come across problems. That is the nature of these whole projects. If they were easy, we'd all be doing them without a blink of our eye. They are not easy. They've been made much easier because the technology is actually pretty pervasive. So I observed that my teams would get stuck on a particular issue, whether it's investment or it's recruitment of people or it's a timeline or it's a choice of suppliers, and become paralyzed because actually who was really the final decision maker, and perhaps there was a big risk or perceived risk. So I created, and this is the action that I would like to suggest to you do, a digital and IT steering meeting, which was, and this idea is a governance suggestion to you. And the reason I set this up was it was a quarterly meeting, or actually during the whole transformations, it was monthly. And I chaired it with various members of the leadership team that were appropriate. And then the agenda was for the digital team or the IT team or marketing, depending on who had an issue, to present something that they needed resolving. And this was what I would call a gross negative, a problem where they were stifled or stuck and they needed in the end somebody to arbitrate. And in the end, I took that responsibility on my shoulders to say, well, if I can't arbitrate when I've been given a good explanation of something, well, who else can? And it's proven to be very, very effective. And I'll give you one very quick example. I noticed that even if in other meetings I'd said we could spend money and recruit people or invest in a part of the transformation, quite a few of the teams were hesitating. They sort of didn't believe the words that had come down from various other meetings that they could go ahead. So I went back to an old paper form and actually got the problem written onto a piece of paper, which I and the CDO, the CFO, and the CIO would all sign, so that somebody in an operational role would say, well, hang on, I've got now a piece of paper and it's signed. Clearly, I can go ahead. So very tactical, but very practical. I'm going to go on to the sustain area, but again, going back to the word cloud, about money. Because in the end, one of the big areas that I want to suggest to you, you could do something different and it would really liberate you, is to approach CapEx differently. Now, I don't know how your company runs it, but both Sunil and I were chatting, and our experience is that in the budgeting phase, a notice sent to either all the regions or businesses or countries, depending how big your company is, or teams, give us the suggestions for CapEx that you want to spend. And a long shopping list comes. It's not very strategic, but it doesn't matter. It's things that people want. And the list is always longer than the money that is there. So then the leadership team or the CEO arbitrarily makes a decision and cuts some things and keeps some things. And either people are happy or they're very unhappy, and quite often will go off and actually spend the money from some other pot and do the IT anyway because they were frustrated that the leadership team did not support them. Well, this is not a sustainable way of operating. not particularly in the digital e-com world, which is all about agility and speed. So I now have a continuous CapEx planning process, literally on a monthly or again quarterly basis. I completely review with the leadership team where we want to spend CapEx, particularly if we talk about e-com and digital. We'll find that we agreed to something perhaps in January, and either it's been delayed or we've had new information or we've overspent, and therefore we need to recut the pie. We need to do this in two ways. We need to have a 2-year CapEx view, because actually a lot of these programs roll into the second year and we better be aware of how much we've committed. But we also need to be able to chop and change much more frequently than on an annual basis. So I think you will find that tactic very, very helpful, and I would recommend it. My last tactic that you can do straight away, this perhaps applies more to the retailers amongst you, but if you're selling anything, I hope that you go into shops and actually have a look at what you're selling, what the competition is selling, and make a comparison. They're called store visits, and many management teams do those. What I've observed is almost no management teams do an e-com shop visit. So now, on a regular basis, as frequently as I do a store visit, we put up computer screens. We sit as a management team with the local management, if that's appropriate, because I'm visiting.
I think we've lost Jeremy.
Am I back? Yeah, am I back? Am I back? Yeah. Am I back?
Yeah.
Yes, you are, Jeremy.
Yeah, sorry, I did get lost. So anyway, quickly to finish on that, we then look at, how easy it was to buy from us, how problematic, how many clicks it was required to find products, how our merchandising. And again, very tactical, but very strategic in its application. I would strongly recommend that you create a new e-com store visit to replace your retail store visit. So hopefully those are helping you both in the deliver, but also the sustain area, which I was focusing on particularly there. Sunil, tell me some of yours, or all of us.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, and I talked about it earlier as a big issue from my experience is this whole area of the middle management engagement or lack of engagement. A strategy / tactic that I would strongly recommend, and I speak from personal experience, is giving that senior middle management organizational accountability and empowerment to succeed. I talk from personal experience. For a number of years, I've had both extremes. The command and control type leadership, do what I say, versus the more servant-led type of leadership, where I'm given genuine freedom to succeed. And I can tell you, in the corporate roles I've had, 3 times I went against corporate IT strategy, much to the bemusement of the global CIO. However, I had the support of the regional exec. That regional exec saw that I was totally focused on value, not just towing the company line. And you know how that support made me feel? It made me feel I wanted to achieve more, I wanted to do more, I wanted to stretch more, I wanted to push more. It's a great feeling, I can honestly tell you, when you have that empowerment and accountability and that, given middle management are therefore influencing the more less experienced members of your team, that cascades. So I would say it's critical you think about how you develop and grow your middle management, and you give them that organizational accountability and empowerment, number one. We spoke earlier about agile. Yeah, cool. The whole world is centered around agile. And my personal point of view is that agile isn't so much about the process of agile and all the tools that support agile. It's about the mindset. I kind of laugh when I say that I was doing agile 30 years ago. It was just called something completely different. It was the mindset. And I think today, the company for me, which embodies agility, is Amazon, with their day one philosophy, where every single day feels like the first day of your startup. For those who have worked with, for, know of, startups and that buzz and energy, it just creates a completely different dynamic. And I can talk from my home. My daughter started Amazon 6 months ago. God, I wish I had her platform, because what she's learned and developed and grown in that environment is incredible. I can't wait to see her career sort of drive and progress at speed. And I'd argue, given it's a mindset, is there any reason why any business or any leader on this call can't start to adapt/adopt that day one mindset. It's quite incredible. In terms of the actual sort of, and the agility comes within the context of an operating model, as we spoke about earlier. With that operating model, is about being, very, being customer centric over product centric, customer first, product second. Absolutely. Your organization and your thinking is all centered around the customer. Metricize the business, not just on financials, but customer experience. Build yourself a customer experience roadmap as part of that operating model. Don't try and do too much because you'll dilute the experience, but put that roadmap forward. For every role, for every person in the business, I used to work in a corporate where everyone sold. You didn't have to be a salesperson, but everyone sold. So likewise, in your business, everyone is a customer experience professional. So put an objective or a goal within measure them. Make part of their pay rise experience. What they can contribute towards. And lastly, and not necessarily least, in terms of customer centricity, very, very topical right now is how do you build diverse and inclusive teams within your business, from leadership all the way down to the shop floor, which allows you to be more customer centric in the context of your operating model. It's well known, data is the new oil. If data is the new oil as part of your operating model, how are you structuring and formulating your business, moving it from but mainly anecdotal/gut into being data driven? There are, do you need an army of data scientists? Probably not. I think I saw in the word cloud about training and skill set. Could you cross-train, upskill your existing business analysts, your financial analysts, your systems analysts, or why not? Yes, it's part of the investment, but your return, given that data is the new oil, is likely to be quite excessive. And last but not least, in terms of this operating model, consider innovation at the core. Great businesses retain competitive advantage through innovation ahead of the competition. Cost cutting will only get you so far. I mean, I work for a business that was one of the best innovators that I could think. It's lost its way a little bit, in my opinion, because it's gone the other way towards cost cutting. But I think it's back, and it's back with a bang. And it's innovating. It's innovating through internal innovation, through sponsoring entrepreneurship programs. It's looking at the broader ecosystem of startups and accelerators to bring new thinking and just juice up the organization. I'm aware of one very large corporate in terms of its operating model, that the CEO took a very difficult decision that he didn't feel that his existing team and structure was going to deliver its digital transformation journey, and actually completely removed, it's a horrible word, maybe transformed is a better word, transformed the whole organization and brought in those that had come from a digital background, our natives, our customer experience, our user experience, UX experts. So that's probably a very big strategy/tactic, is to completely re-engineer your workforce. But I would argue it was all centered around the operating model and how that business delivered its digital transformation journey.
Excellent. Thank you, Sunil. Just a quick reminder for anybody, if you've got any questions for Jeremy or Sunil now or in the next part of the session, use the chat function. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, so we'd like to get some of your thoughts on any areas that you'd like to probe their experience on. Thanks again for those points, guys. Listening here, lots of good tactics that people can employ, but I think that the title of the session suggests that we're telling our audience how they can really gain competitive advantage. So from those tactics, where do you see the competitive advantage coming?
Well, I feel the sustain area is the most important. And I think if we left from this call with one thought that may be new and fresh for everybody, it is to invest far more effort and time and thinking in the sustain part of a digital business journey than just in that delivery phase, which is obviously the painful one, and particularly if somebody isn't already there. But if you are there, any complacency in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis going forward to stay ahead of the competition is dangerous. So I thought it might be just interesting to give a couple of examples of people that I have seen do things that I've really respected, because I can see how it's influenced me and given me a desire to spend with them over somebody else. So, that's an advantage they've gained. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you one soundbite I tell a lot of people, and I'd like to share it with you, which is this: that if Amazon is now vying between Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon as the most valuable companies in the world. So as you might know, Apple and Microsoft have been jockeying, and they've gone up and down over the last couple of months, but Amazon is right there. And if Jeff Bezos is, as we know, the richest man in the world, it seems to me completely and utterly obvious to work out how much of the Amazon experience one can copy and just put into your own business, because why wouldn't you? Now, the one place that I would like you to look at is actually the product landing page, the page that you land on whenever you choose a product. I am continually amazed at how unhelpful most and many pages are on the information I want. And you have to realize that most consumers, including me, are very weird. If you start off with the assumption that every one of you is slightly weird, you'll understand that you will be wanting slightly different things from that page than somebody else, because we have strange needs. Amazon has understood this better than anybody else. And if you go to any page, you'll see reams of either reviews or questions or comparisons. All of that is seeking to answer the weird question better than anybody else. So competitive advantage can come from one simple place. Get that product landing page as informative and as simple as possible. Now, okay, is there an example of somebody transforming themselves in that way? Well, it is eBay. I'm coming back to eBay. So I don't know how many of you used it, but I would say about 1.5 years ago, it was an appalling experience. You know, they were clearly behind. And actually, I invented the eBay management to my management team, and I was completely underwhelmed by them. And I thought, well, they've lost the plot. I have to say now, I don't know who the guy is, and I need to find out who's running eBay, because they have completely transformed the buying experience. They've copied Amazon, actually. But my God, now I get updates on when the product's going to be delivered. I get information on my payment, etc., etc. And I would strongly recommend you go and look at eBay and buy on there and celebrate the transformation and how competitive it is now. I want to give you 2 other examples, because actually I think it's your responsibility to bring to the teams something that would make the buyer's life easy. And I would like you to go to a company called Jackson Fencing, if you would, not perhaps now, but later, because I was looking for a piece of fencing for my garden. And there are multiple sites selling fencing, but I went on Jackson's Fencing, and they have a little tool called a fence builder. Now I thought, well, this is interesting. So they asked me how big my garden was. So I put it in. I have an estate. No, I don't. I have a relatively small garden, but it took me through steps. I then was taken through a step on the concrete or cement I need to put the posts in, how many nails I would need. And through this fence builder, at the end, I was given the complete price and all the components to build a fence without forgetting anything. Well, what a simple idea. I actually rang up the company, asked to speak to the manager of the company, just to say, look, you deserve a congratulations, because you've got a simple tool that has transformed my desire to buy with you, because you've actually answered my problem. So that's a good example. And I want to give you one other one, Pandora. Actually, this is one I put in with the team, which is that if you're a man shopping Pandora online and there's 1,500 different charms, and we are not brilliant at either searching for them, and by the way, nor are women particularly, because it's so complicated, well, wouldn't it be helpful to have a bracelet builder where you actually could choose a bracelet and then drop different charms onto it and see what they look like and see the price and then buy that whole unit? Well, we did that, and that was one of the components to our success at Christmas. So to summarize, competitive advantage will come from many executional basics, but if you want to walk away from this presentation with 2 thoughts. Number 1, look at your product landing page and say, is it super simple as Amazon? And 2, what additional tool could you offer that makes the buying process or the decision process simpler than it would be from somebody else? And I think you can go quite a long way with those 2 thoughts. Sunil, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Kevin, do you mind putting up the word cloud again, please, for me?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put up the summary slide, which includes the word cloud. Hopefully you can read it. If you can't, tell me and I'll switch back.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that in full screen mode, Kevin? Sorry, my eyesight. testing me. Just came to the attendees, what the attendees came back with their issues. Okay, that's fine. I can just about read that.
Sorry,
thank you. Yeah, and Jeremy talked about some of the executional elements in terms of how to get competitive advantage from digital transformation. And as I personally look at a lot of those issues, I'm going to invite you to take away one thing from today in terms of digital transformation as a competitive advantage. And that's about people. I think if you look across and through for all those processes, for all those attributes and organizational things, it's about people. Develop great people. Give them empowerment to act and act fast. And they will deliver great results. And accelerate and fuel strategic initiatives like digital transformation. And that's where you'll get your competitive advantage. There's two quotes which I think they're the same or very similar, which I'd personally like to leave you with as I think about digital transformation and competitive advantage. If you take care of your people will take care of your customers. Or said another way, if we consistently exceed the expectations of our employees, they will consistently exceed the expectations of our customers. Shep Hykin. So for me, for everything we've spoken about, it's about the people and giving them a fantastic work experience for the time that they're with you in order to fuel digital transformation, which drives competitive advantage. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So we haven't actually had any questions come through on the chat function. So whether Jeremy and Sunil are happy with this, I'm going to play a very dangerous game and allow anybody to take themselves off mute if they do want to ask either of the chaps something in relation to what it is.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
And even if you have a statement rather than a question, is there something you agree with that you just want to confirm with everybody else, or you disagree with and you'd like to make that point? Don't hesitate. We're here to learn together. I'm sure one of you has something on your mind. We might have to pick on you. Stuart Ellis, what do you got on your mind?
Is about to.
Hi guys. Yeah, I was just going to volunteer and say hello. Thanks guys. It's a really informative and a lot of food for thought. We've been through our kind of delivery phase over the last 18 months and now really want to get into the sustain phase. So really apt and timely for, as we think about as an organisation, how we really drive revenue out of all of the infrastructure and platforms that we put in. So I just want to say thanks. It was a really informative session.
Okay, well, thank you. That's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gervais. Anybody else before we wrap up? Give you a few seconds.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in. I'm Stuart Ellis, so thanks for picking on me. I'm the CEO of a group of schools, actually, so we have a very different kind of outlook, but it's been really fascinating to to hear the parallels really with with the commercial world. And I think for me, some of the inspiration came right at the beginning today, which was about not being afraid to set those really almost unrealistic timescales and really get things moving. People always find excuses to do other things, and actually what we do know is our competitors are getting on board with this stuff, and actually we need to do the same and do a bit more of that store visiting, that data visiting, to get our act together. So thank you very much indeed. It's been really fantastic.
Well, just one thing, Stuart, I think actually the schools world, in terms of just the interaction with parents, is leading a lot of fantastic technology. And as you say, there is many chances to improve. But we totally agree, both of us, the agility to turn that into action. If you set these unrealistic timelines, it forces people to act, particularly if you get on their back a bit, to say, right, I need to speak to you in 5 o'clock every day for the next 2 weeks, and I want to hear what you've done by 5 o'clock. I tell you, you get miracles are achieved, and it's necessary.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jeremy, Stuart, thank you for answering or just making your comment there. Just wanted to share. So I'm currently working with a social enterprise called Equal Education. They basically provide tutoring and tuition support for those from SEND and underprivileged backgrounds. They spent 5.5 months evaluating who they should partner with in terms of their digital transformation journey. I'm doing pro bono support for them, and suffice to say, we've gone from considering to selecting to funding to developing to implementing a digital transformation around Salesforce in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And the business is so excited because they've been using manual forms, they've been rekeying, the tutor experience is crap because he or she doesn't know where they're going, how they're going, they're not getting feedback from the kids. And obviously with the whole move to online, well, accelerated move of online, it just goes to show how something like this can really impact, get the organizations fired up. I just got a great feeling about them. They're just going to go from strength to strength. 5 months, 6 weeks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Anybody else before we move on?
Yeah, Andy Desange here. I've got a question, probably more for Jeremy than anybody else. You spoke about your experiences at Pandora. I kind of picked up, I think your supplier for your e-com platform there was possibly, an outsourced supplier. You weren't necessarily running it yourself. Would it be fair to then say your kind of challenges in that digital transformation journey were more around innovation, cultural, the organization understanding it needed to move its channel more to digital, to an e-com platform? Was that where you saw most of those challenges rather than the technical delivery?
Very good question. I think the first, they're interdependent, because without the first, the second isn't potentially happening at the pace to stay competitive. So without a doubt, the first point was to make clear it's
Hopefully Jeremy will realise we've lost him and come back.
Yeah, I'm back again. Sorry, I don't know why. I have very, very good Wi-Fi here, but it's I'm in somebody else's home. So the first thing is about getting that message of its importance and making sure that there is no doubt in anybody's mind that this is the priority for not only effort but also spending money. And I'll do one little comment on that. The second thing, though, is the executional elements were being hampered by what I would call almost all-out war between the digital teams and the IT teams. And therefore, delivery was being completely compromised because rather than being aligned with one goal and everybody taking their responsibility, there was a competition as to who could do what between the functions. And that just created, chaos in terms of delivery, but also confusion. And as Sunil has said, it meant that the guys working below the bosses of those functions felt really disempowered and caught up in a political dynamic as opposed to just delivery. So I think we have both of those elements, and they are very interdependent. And as Sunil said, so much of what you then discover, it's all about the people, far less about the tech. In fact, the tech is almost generic now in some ways. It's how the people are led or then embrace it to do something special, I would say.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you for the question. That's very helpful for everybody else, I think.
Thanks, Emmerich. Anyone else before I move on? You keep surprising me with the late questions. Good. Well, thanks again, Jeremy, Sunil. Hopefully the audience can get the feeling from today's session of just how passionate both you are about the topic. Obviously, you've made your life's work, so there must be some passion there. But I think I can offer this out to the audience and people watching the recording. You're open to answer any questions they've got. You're willing for them to get in touch. Me likewise. So message out to the audience if you've got any questions. Post this. You encounter any challenges throughout your transformations. Feel free to use your contact details. Reach out to myself, Jeremy, or Sunil, and we'll see what we can do to help you out, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for your presence. Speak soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.